Hello everyone and welcome to episode 11 of the AutoGuide Show. We are the editors of AutoGuide.com and its many sister sites. I am Jodi and here we have Sami.
Hello.
And Sebastien.
Hiya.
A new episode drops every single Friday on YouTube or your favorite podcast provider. If you're listening, please make sure to rate and review because it helps us reach more people. This week we're going to be talking about crossovers, which I know you guys love so much.
They're specialized.
They are good.
Crossovers.
These
are
fun.
unique.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the Jaguar I-Pace and the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trailhawk.
And I'm going to talk about how no one uses it, which is to do off-roading things.
Yes.
Not just crawling around in the mall.
In the mall, yeah.
Yes.
So we'll get to that later. We're actually going to start with a user question, and it's from Scorpion251970. And his question is
I really hope that's not his password.
Because so now we all know. Send your PIN number too. So this question is for you, Sami. Since you're an FRS driver, would you ever trade it in for a MX-5 RF?
He also adds, I know it's considerably more expensive.
Yes.
He knows. I know. We all know.
We all know.
Would I ever trade it in? No. I don't think so. Mainly because the FRS does a bunch of really small details that make it a really good everyday driver that the MX-5 doesn't do. For example, I know we make fun of the rear seats in the FRS a lot, but they're usable. They're like, that's where I throw my junk when I'm not using it, and you don't have that kind of storage space in an MX-5 at all. Same with the cargo, the trunk. It's a huge cargo area.
Yeah, so it's too small to put people in, but it's okay for like your karate bags and stuff.
Yeah. And not only that, but like when you take it to the track, you can take an extra set of tires. It's super helpful. Additionally, the roof component of it, the hardtop MX-5, the RF, it's still quite loud. And I also don't really like the idea of driving a convertible in snowy weather. I think there can still be some cold air leakage through the roof and stuff like that. And I would prefer a hardtop that's designed from the get-go to be a hardtop.
I guess, but the RF does have a retractable hardtop, so it can't be as bad in winter as the cloth top one.
Right. On the other hand, that's the car I would get. If I had to pick an MX-5, I think the cloth top is more attractive to me because it's lighter. I like how quick it is to just sling it back and forth. It's cheaper, and I think it looks better. I'm actually one of the few people who think that with the roof up, actually in general, when you drive an MX-5 RF and you look over your shoulder or you check your mirror, you see this body panel that is that's distracting, and I don't like that. And the soft cloth model doesn't have that. But still, I don't know if I'd trade the MX-5 for an MX-5. I throw away my FRS for an MX-5. On the other hand, that new engine that's in the MX-5, the ND2, is so good, and the transmission in an MX-5 is also really solid. And I have to say that the Mazda's a great product. I just don't think it's for me right now.
Would you trade your FRS in for anything? Is there not necessarily?
That's a good point.
I've been talking to you about this actually
I know you
a lot,
have, which is why I brought it up, because you have an answer.
We got in our household. We got a new more practical vehicle to handle the snow and the daily commute and stuff like that. And so that means that the FRS will be getting a little less action than it used to get. And I was thinking of just getting rid of it and getting something really wild and wacky, something like an older AMG, like a C63 AMG, which would be just insane. But then I remembered that those things are very expensive to maintain, and the
FRS costs nothing to maintain.
The FRS is super affordable to maintain. Yeah. I would want to get it, if I was going to get rid of the FRS, it would have to be for something that isn't just fun to drive. It has to be something just the next level in one way or another. And the C63 sounds insane. It's got serious straight line performance, and it looks and sounds like badass. Like, it just is incredible. It's a V8, right? Like that's what makes. I would have to get. I wouldn't want to get something with a comparable power level and performance tier.
Yeah, if you're going to get something new, it'll be completely.
It has to be something different.
Yeah.
But if you're worried about cold weather.
Yeah,
with
no,
a hard
I know.
top on,
exactly.
An AMG is definitely where you want to be.
It's not going to work.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
like I
Rear-wheel
said,
drive, oodles of horsepower.
Like I said, it's about changing for a different experience, and that's what I would be gunning for. I've even mentioned things like a really old Celica All-Track, like a turbocharged Celica four-wheel drive model. I think that would be pretty cool. And I'd probably save some money just on the get-go with that, but then have to spend all that money in maintenance anyways. So that's what I'd be. I mean, I'm sure you guys have looked at your daily drivers and said, yeah, would I like to replace this with something very similar performance-wise? I don't know if that's always the ideal path to take.
I think that's the way a lot of other people think, though. Like, for me, if I have a 10-year-old Golf, if I am a regular person and I'm shopping around, maybe I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just get a newer Golf because I know it and it's familiar, but it has all of the tech and stuff that I want.
Why would you get rid of your Golf to get another Golf? That weirds me out. Like, if you want to get something new, get something that's different, like new and different. It's a whole new experience, a whole new chapter.
Yeah, but this is why, like, for example, Honda Civics get bigger and more expensive because they're growing with their audience, right? So they remember the people who had Civics 10 years ago, and they're like, hey, you should upgrade to this newer Civic because it's familiar to you, but like way better. So I think a lot of normal people, not enthusiast people, shop in that manner.
Right. I think I understand that completely, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for your question, Mr. or Ms. Scorpion. If you have a question, please email us at tips@AutoGuide.com, or you can leave a comment on the post on YouTube or on AutoGuide, and we love to answer your questions. So, moving on.
Let's get into some cars. Let's chat about cars.
Well,
is that not appropriate? Why are you guys laughing at me for that?
I don't know.
It just seems like we
You're being weird.
Let's chat about cars. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
What do we got? We got this.
So we have a Jaguar I-Pace, and this is kind of the second time I've spent considerable time with an electric car. And the first time I had a house and a garage, so I was able to plug it in every night. This is the first time I've lived in a condo without a charger that I've had to drive an electric car for an extended time. So in general, like the I-Pace, people are really excited about it. Like tons. I posted a photo of it on Twitter, and I've never seen so many questions pop out about it. Yeah. So people are just really curious to know stuff about performance, how it stacks up against like a Tesla.
Well, I think that's one of the things about it is that like other electric cars don't feel like they live up to the same level of luxury as a Tesla. Like a GM Bolt is kind of like, I know it's maybe a smarter choice, but it doesn't have quite the same cachet.
Right.
Nissan Leaf is a Nissan. So
this is a status thing.
This is a status thing, and it's like it's got similar performance to the Tesla and similar status to the Tesla. So it feels like a Tesla competitor in a very real way.
And right now, there's nothing else that competes with it. Right now, it's just the Tesla Model X and the Jaguar I-Pace. I think next year, the e-tron and the GLE, or not the what is it called? EQC is going to come out, and those will be a little bit stronger competitors. But yeah, people are really excited about it. It's a really strong contender for like every single car of the year out there. So like our own for World Car of the Year, which Sami is a part of.
Oh yes.
For North American Car of the Year, which I'm a jury member of. And it's just been really impressive all around, and in a way that maybe the Tesla can't get.
Okay.
Mostly because, like, it just, everything about it is good. Like, there's no little trim bits that are wonky or anything like that. Because, like, Jaguar has, I guess, a little bit more experience making production cars than Tesla does.
Sad to say about an English company, but
yeah.
I mean, but I've heard that it's very quiet inside. Like, everything is really well bolted together.
Yeah.
The windows have double glazing, and there are no bumpers falling off in the rain.
You can't hear anything. And so I'm just going to touch on the specs a little bit. So full range is 234 miles, which is about what you would need in a week of like commuting. The base price in the US is $69,500.
Nice.
And in Canada, it's actually a lot more expensive. The base price in Canada is $86,500.
Yeah, that seems like a ridiculous jump.
And it is a ton of money. And when we're talking about like that high, I just don't know if it's worth it.
We're also talking that there's no incentives included in those prices, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, not anymore.
This is not including like taxes or incentives or anything like that.
That US price of $69,500 sounds really good, especially if you're considering the fact that there's no EPA incentive added or removing, like lowering that cost. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I drove this a while back, actually, during the New York Auto Show as a pre-production, and I was really impressed with not the performance, like the usual electric car performance of range and the quietness. It's actually a very agile car. It changes directions very quickly. It doesn't feel. It bugs me that we call it a crossover because it doesn't quite feel like a crossover on the road. It's
It feels more like a hatchback.
Yes. It feels like a sportback, in my opinion. It feels a lot closer to the A7 or like a CLS in terms of its design. It doesn't feel quite that high up either.
Well, I stood next to it, and I was really shocked by how short it is and how low to the ground it is.
Absolutely.
It has some SUV proportions, but like its overall size, you're right. Yeah, it's really short, it's really wide, and it doesn't look all that SUV-ish. It's an interesting design. I will say that it's the car that has made me say heinous butt for the second time this week, because it's got that weird kind of step
It
thing
does.
over
It's just ends.
Yeah,
it's just a box. And
I think that's an aerodynamic move on their part.
everything regarding its design was made for better aerodynamics. And so they also did a really interesting thing where they put a real grille on there, even though it doesn't need it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I was talking to someone at Jaguar, and they basically said that they included the grille because they wanted it to look like a Jaguar.
Okay.
It was just a brand identity thing because they're not as established as a brand.
Sure.
And so if they took that signature element away, they were afraid that people wouldn't know it's a Jaguar. So that's why they kept it on there, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's also a little panel that allows for air to channel through it, like in that front hood area. So that also, I think, is another element of that grille that it connects in that spot as well. So it helps improve the aerodynamics and even some performance in the rain, the way that the rain would flow off your windshield.
Yeah, it's really interesting because just being an electric car driver for a week, I've learned so much about it, and just a lot of people can get really nerdy about electric car driving in the same way that like enthusiasts can about like tuning their stuff.
Sure.
And so it's really interesting. Everyone's been asking me about like my power consumption at highway speeds versus city speeds, and they're like they really love getting into these little granular details. And I'm new to all this. Like I'm new to all this electric car stuff. Our posters are falling down. And so I'm learning a lot while driving it. In terms of range and stuff, I've charged it once so far with not a super fast charger, but
a public charger,
a public charger. And I got about 32 kilometers for an hour of charging. And so I was able to drive you like a 100-kilometer round trip with no worries at all.
That wasn't so bad, yeah.
Yeah, and I was driving it like a normal car. Like I wasn't trying to baby it or hypermile it. So I'm actually pretty impressed by the range.
Yep.
The other thing is that I don't have a charger at home, so I've been driving it to work and just plugging it into the wall socket, which is super slow. It's not really, I get like 2% an hour or something like that, so it's super, super slow. But my commute home is only 3 kilometers anyway, so.
And the nice thing about electric cars too is that you don't run out of gas being stopped, right? You're using a lot less electricity just by sitting around. So if you get stuck in traffic, you're not as worried about losing power. So it's like, I've heard a lot of people saying like, yeah, well, it gets 300 kilometers, but what happens if you get stuck in traffic? And that's actually ideal for an electric car.
Yeah, because you're barely using any energy when you're just stuck there in traffic. Yeah, so I've been really impressed. I really like using the regenerative braking. The one-pedal driving is really cool, although I think they could have taken it a little bit further. I
don't
like
know what it is about it, but
it takes some getting used to.
Okay.
And it's a little bit different in the Leaf because when you're in the Leaf and you're doing one-pedal driving, you can time it exactly. It's a lot easier to get used to, but you can actually come to a full stop without touching the brake pedal.
Yep.
With the I-Pace, you can't do that. Like you're gonna have to hit the brake pedal at some point because it won't come to a complete stop. It'll just keep like creeping forward. So I think they could have taken it a little bit further.
When you first got in it, you told me that you were having some issues with the HVAC controls and the way the center console was sorted out. That was the first impression. Has it gotten easier to use over the week?
Yes, it has. So initially there's a little bit of a learning curve because I think they were trying to push the boundary in terms of how futuristic and how what the user interface. Yeah. So it's got the big touchscreen. It's got a little touchscreen where you can use to control the HVAC and stuff like that. So it does take a little bit of getting used to, but I've had it now for 4 days and I'm used to it now. Okay. I get it.
And another thing that people were really curious about, and I didn't realize, when I drove it, I didn't realize that this was something that should be something on the forefront of buyers' mind, but the visibility of it, especially rearward visibility, is tough to gauge.
It's not very good. I'll tell you that right now, is that the I-Pace has terrible rearward visibility. But it's also the same thing with the F-Pace as well. I think I almost killed like 3 people when driving the F-Pace because its blind spots are enormous. Right? And our cameraman, he's also almost, it's just, and that's a problem. And so you just have to be a little bit more aware of what's going on around you if you have blind spots like that.
So with these really high-tech vehicles, we're starting to see some solutions to that kind of stuff because aerodynamics, making a car more aerodynamic might have an impact on its visibility, and we're starting to see things like rear view mirror cameras take the place instead of regular rear view mirrors and improving the visibility. Do you think that would be something that would improve the I-Pace?
Yes and no. In theory, I think those cameras work well. They sound really cool, but in reality, they're just too jarring to use.
Yeah, sometimes they're like, it feels like there's a tiny bit of lag or the field of vision.
It's just your eyes aren't used to seeing it in that way. So you're gonna have to just like retrain your brain to understand what it's showing you. But I think it's possible. I think it's just a matter of how quickly you can get used to it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's also fast.
It's very fast.
It's so fast.
I guess we've left the best note for last, I guess.
Well, I mean, we're car people, so that's kind of what we care about, right? And I'm into all the green stuff too, but I also love that it has 512 pound-feet of torque. That is instant.
Feels it. It's
oh my
insane.
God, it is so fast.
It's like being on
It's like it's just launching you, like
like
it's just
catapult.
catapulting you. Yeah, and so that's just a feeling that I feel like I'll never get used to, and it's really fun. Like it still gives me the giggles.
Electric power is really good. Yeah, and this thing just assists you in 4.5 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's like, through the whole travel of the pedal, you're like,
and it doesn't stop either,
it keeps
which is crazy. So that's a lot of fun. It's also it's a car that people are really excited about in a way that I haven't seen people excited about Jaguar in the near past.
I mean, I think Jaguar does a really good job with their designs. I think the F-Pace gained some attention. F-Type has always gained attention, and I think the I-Pace blends the two of this gorgeous design with some utilitarian and forward-thinking pieces as well. So I think I see that. But what really blows my mind is I think people want to know if this is a vehicle that's going to be reliable. Jaguar, as we mentioned in the past, does not have the strongest reputation for reliability, especially when it comes to electronics. Why make an EV? And is this EV going to be is it going to be the one? Has anything caught your eye? Has anything not made any sense? Has like an infotainment system or a window switch not worked, or I don't know what to say.
The only thing that comes to mind is the reverse camera didn't come on once, but that was it, and it was one and done, like it never happened again.
Interesting.
I think it's really important for Jaguar to figure this stuff out though, because eventually they were talking about how they're going to become an EV only brand one day.
Okay.
What?
I mean, they've got a long way to go. They've got a lot of cars in their lineup right now.
For sure.
And they have a fairly modern engine, that Ingenium engine, I think it's called. And it's a fairly modern motor. And to make that transition, to make that decision to go all EV is a bold one.
I don't think they've made like a definitive, we're doing this. I think they said it could be possible that they would move in that direction eventually, like not right now.
Also going to be necessary if all these countries and cities that are saying they're not going to allow the sale of internal combustion engines, if that all pans out like they hope, like they're saying it will, especially in Europe, then brands like Jaguar and Audi and German brands and all these people are going to have to make electric cars. They don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
On the other hand, they're embracing one thing very, very well, and that's the motorsport of electric racing. They have that whole spec series that's going to show up during Formula E, and that's, I don't know if it's funny or cool.
I have been saying this for years. It's time for Sebastien's terrible opinions.
We should make that a regular segment.
Yeah, exactly. We need I've been saying that people should be racing, automakers should be racing SUVs and crossovers for like so long now. Okay.
Electric ones?
Outside
Or
of
just
Baja?
All crossovers,
And
electric
Champion.
ones especially, why not? Okay, so first of all, they keep selling these cars like they're powerful and like they're sporty. They keep cutting the roof farther and farther down, trying to convince us that they're coupes. So, how do you prove to me that this is a sports SUV, a sports coupe? By racing it. And you say, this is ridiculous, these things are huge. They're not that sporty. I can feel you guys saying that right now.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, what about NASCAR? NASCAR, in the history of time, has been all enormous cars. A Galaxy 500, are you kidding me? In the 60s, that thing was the size of the SS JFK.
Okay,
It's
so you're
big.
suggesting we start putting like Honda CRVs and like Jeep Cherokees
Yep.
into NASCAR?
Yeah, 100%. That would be hilarious. My one example was, specifically DTM. I wrote an article for Fortitude.com, please read it. And it was about the Audi Q5. I want that in DTM. So DTM is Germany's like local touring car series.
Right.
And it used to be a place where BMW, Audi, and Mercedes went to go have a good fight and just, fight amongst themselves for no good real reason.
But no one does it anymore,
But
right?
nobody does it anymore because nobody buys small sedans anymore.
Right.
So if Audi was to bring a Q5 into it instead of an A5, then they could get the benefit of having they could sell SUVs, which is something that will happen. They don't have to sell to enthusiasts because enthusiasts already know what they're buying. It doesn't matter if Mercedes beats Audi in a DTM race.
Yeah, but do non-enthusiasts watch motorsports?
They would if it was hilarious and they were crashing into each other all the time.
Aw.
And the car that they owned was in it. No non-enthusiast owns an A5. But they do own a Q5. And if you saw your Q5 racing and you had your 5-year-old with you, you'd be like, oh, look, there it is on TV. I'm going to sit down and watch this with you and have a more moment of family togetherness.
I mean, it's not
He's
crazy.
got a point.
Well, okay, so here's the thing, is that they're all doing Nürburgring lap times anyway with their crossovers. So doing it
They
in
are?
official, yeah.
Well, I have blanked out on this. Okay.
Okay, like Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio.
That's Alfa Romeo.
The Urus. That's what I mean, though. They're crossovers.
Boom, sorry.
Sebastian's getting real violent over here. He's like really passionate about this subject.
So fast.
But I don't think it's crazy. Because if that's what people want to buy, then that's supposedly what they want to watch as well.
Exactly.
Right?
People want to see what they own represented on TV. First of all, I think it'd be hilarious. I think watching SUVs go around crashing and running into each other would be so much fun. Second of all,
it sounds dangerous.
Second of all, well, they're going slower, so it's safer. Second of all, if you have an SUV, you have actual engineering issues. You don't have a car that's designed to do this that all of a sudden can go fast. Like, yeah, I know a supercar can go fast. It's been designed to go fast. If you make an SUV go fast, that's amazing. That's cool.
Okay, so once again, Sebastian makes a good point, but he takes it to a point in which I can't agree with
I
him.
may have taken things too far.
It's too far.
All to say that I think the I-Pace racing series is hilarious and a good time, and I think it's a great idea.
I agree with you. I do think the I-Pace racing series is funny and it's hilarious. I said funny.
Because there's no noise.
There's no noise. There's just ginormous SUVs on these street courses that should not be accommodating big SUV, or at least SUV-like cars. And it's a way to promote, as Sebastian said, this product that people can get in their hands for $69,500. That's pretty nice. And will improve that visibility.
Yeah, and I also think it's important, not just from a motorsports perspective, but all that technology will somehow trickle down into the regular cars.
Exactly.
And so if motorsports is the test bed for new stuff, your suggestion isn't crazy.
Exactly. You're
I'm just making it more logical than you.
That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me, by the way. But my suggestion isn't crazy. But yeah, that's another thing. You're actually doing something on Sunday to sell it on Monday. You're racing on Sunday, and the technology will eventually make it in, especially in this electric racing thing. And Jaguar's also in Formula E, so they also have the traditional open wheel, top speed racing type of stuff.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Moving on.
You want to talk about what the other stuff I want to talk about?
Yeah, Sami went to SEMA for the first time in his life, and he'll
that
never go
was
back.
Wild.
But he was also there to drive some pretty cool Jeeps in some pretty cool settings.
So the first thing I noticed when I went to SEMA is that every single product that was being shown off and demonstrated was a truck. It was lifted, it had big old knobby tires, and they were like, you can go off-road, you can off-road better with our product. Everyone had a Wrangler on a little rock the size of this to showcase that they've got the right product for you. And you know what? Instead of gawking at all of these products, we actually went to a state park called the Valley of Fire. We took a Jeep Grand Cherokee Trailhawk as well as a Wrangler Rubicon, and we drove those two products in different environments. So I'll talk about the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk, if you don't mind, because the experience was so interesting because I was driving solely on this soft sand. It's really important to set the stage here. This Valley of Fire is all orange and yellow. It's such an interesting landscape. In fact,
I'm not mistaken, it's where they shot Total Recall. I was
Yes.
going to say 2001: A Space Odyssey for some reason, but no, the other famous
Sci-fi, yes.
high art sci-fi.
Yes, Total Recall.
So it looks like Mars.
It looks like Mars.
Is what you're saying. Yeah.
So we had this Grand Cherokee Trailhawk, not the Trackhawk. I know some people are excited to hear about the Trackhawk. We'll talk about that in a future episode of the podcast. But what I will say is that I'm familiar and I feel I'm experienced driving on something that I thought was similar to sand, which is snow. Snow is the slippery surface.
We know what snow is.
I know. But driving in sand requires some different strategies. For example, it needs power. It needs a heavy, heavy foot to get through sand.
Yeah, you were saying this. In snow, you want to be really delicate.
Gentle.
Everything is about being gentle. But in sand, you were saying that it's all about momentum.
You just like hammer through.
Yeah, the key to like driving in snow is to maintain control. So you drive slowly,
Smoothly.
you maintain that weight balance, and you want to make sure you don't slide around. In sand, the key is to not get stuck. And the moment you stop, all of the sand pours into like where it's not supposed to go, and it bogs down the wheels, and then you have to use a heavy foot to pull yourself right out of that again.
Right.
So the cars we had, instead of featuring the base V6, had the 5.7 liter Hemi. That makes 360 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque, and that was beautiful. That was perfect. And one of the most important parts here is there's a ginormous dune. It's about the size of a house. It has to be. It had to be. And I'm looking at this, and they're like, okay, we're going to drive up that and then crest it and come back down, okay? And you're watching people do this. It looks intense. They're going up. You hear a V8 at like full tilt. It goes up there, and then they get up to the top, and then you can see this thing. It's like bouncing around, coming back down. It looks like they're wrestling on the way down. Now, I've done some downhill stuff on sand, soft sand. I think I've done it in a Subaru. And sometimes when you have that hill descent control on, it tries to maintain the front wheel braking, and then the rear end starts to like slip out, and you start like crab walking down, like sideways down this
Which
hill.
does not sound comfortable.
No, but I was worried that would happen. So here we go. I look at this hill. I hammer down. We go up. It's really cool. I get up there, and we just go right down. And I thought I would be wrestling the steering. I thought that I'd be hammering the brakes, making sure that I gotta do something to maintain control. And that thing happened.
So it was just a lot easier than you expected it to be?
In that situation, so much easier. Now I think that has a lot to do with there's like a bunch of drive modes that you can select in this Trailhawk, including a sand mode. And that will limit the interaction from the stability control and traction control. We also lowered the tire pressure to make sure we have more surface area on the tires to get going and getting traction when we need it. The one thing that is noticeable though, this is not a desert running vehicle. It's not a Ram. It's not a Ram Power Wagon or an F-150 Raptor.
Right.
Although we raised the air suspension in this vehicle, there are some undulations in the sand, and I started hearing something hitting the tail end. Whether that's the rear diff hitting the body or something more severe than that, you realize that as capable as this vehicle is, there's some limitations to its construction. And you have to drive a little bit more accordingly to how it's built. It was a very unique experience. I really do recommend it, especially for people who buy Grand Cherokees, Jeeps, because on the road, Jeeps have some real true criticisms. They can feel a little loose sometimes in terms of throttle response and steering response. and they can feel a little floaty in terms of suspension. But in off-road situations, all of that is
Those
to
features help you.
absolutely, and make the car not just like excel in those situations, but make you feel like a superhero, and that's something I was not expecting.
That's pretty cool. And so you also took the Wrangler Rubicon rock crawling.
Yeah.
And when you told me this, I was like, wait, they just give you stock Rubicons? So, and I think that is really impressive that like right out of the box,
Yeah.
you can just go to the dealership, buy this Rubicon, and you can just climb up rocks, no problem.
Yeah, and honestly, when you go like this, we did it very slowly, but we still went in this weird like pattern of it's slow. It's very, very slow. I like that because it's accessible. You are not going to fear damaging something or overdriving your car when you're driving at that speed. You also have guides and coaches in every corner of this rock crawling course, who are telling you, and they're looking at your tires, which way to point them and to get going or not. Additionally, the Rubicon comes with so many very important features. Electronic detachable front sway bars, front and rear locking diffs to help you get the traction and the control that you need to get this stout little thing up these hills. And I'm telling you,
These are like
some of
big
the
rocks
yeah,
too,
some
right?
of the grades that you have to ascend are pretty impressive. I thought, honestly, I thought we would slide right the heck back down. But good tires are important. These had BF Goodrich, not KO2, KM2s, which are big knobby tires, and they stuck. I was so impressed with this. And I think as much capability as the cars have, the tires as well have that much to say in the matter.
Cool.
Have you driven one of these Wranglers before, right?
I've driven a Wrangler, have never gone rock crawling though. Like that whole form of driving is completely foreign to me.
This was my first time, and I have to say it's far more accessible than it looks. Again, you are looking at things, and if somebody touches one of these rocks with like the car, it makes a terrifying noise, right? Like you've damaged something. But then again, these cars have a million skid plates. They're designed to they're protecting the core components of the car, and that's okay. So nobody was ever concerned that when you heard that bang or something like that. No, there's something there to protect it. So I have to say, if you are a Jeep owner, consider some of these off-road activities, because I think that would be the ideal way to feel the value and the confidence of your car. In fact, I asked many of the guys, I'm like, are these, like, especially when driving this Grand Cherokee through a sand course, and I said, I think a lot of buyers get these cars because they think it can just go through oblivion. It can go through anything. And here's a case where we actually are just driving a pretty normal car. We changed the tire pressure, but it doesn't require too much extra information.
Yeah, it's otherwise just stock.
Yes.
I think that's incredible.
So I said, is this car idiot-proof? Like, can anybody be like, oh no, there's a mudslide. I'll just take put my Grand Cherokee in mud mode and just go through it. And they're like, like 80% of the way. Like some situations require a good knowledge of what you're dealing with. And if you've never done it before, you're going to be caught off guard. You have to learn on the fly.
It's also just a blast. Like, I haven't done any rock climbing, but my brother has an old Jeep from the 50s or something like that. And, like, we just go down trails with it, but it's so much fun. Like,
It's so fun. I'd rather go off-roading than do track driving, like almost any day.
it's like, it's a blast. And I don't know why. Like, it's hard to explain, but you're just out there and you're like,
It's because you feel like you've overcome something.
Yeah,
Whereas, like, if you're track driving, you're really just against yourself, like your own, your own like times and stuff.
So you're really.
But if you're off-roading, it's like you against nature, and you're like reconnecting with the earth. It just feels good.
I don't know, it feels like you're conquering the earth in some
Well, yeah, that
situations.
too. Yeah, but you're overcoming an obstacle, which is not always the case when you're track driving.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it was a very unique, eye-opening experience because I've always said the Grand Cherokee is an interesting vehicle because it spans a very broad spectrum of price points, but sometimes it misses the point in terms of the on-road commuting aspects of how good a car can be. I've said that in some cases, if you're a regular on-road commuter, something like the Kia Sorento would really be a better choice for you in that size and price point of a vehicle. But then again, seeing this stuff in action, feeling it in action, you understand why a Grand Cherokee might be more preferable than something more mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just the capability, and it's like a brand heritage thing, right? Like, people are really proud of their Jeeps. And don't you feel like that if you're driving a Jeep, you just become part of that family?
You do have to wave at people, right?
It's a
You have to
cult
use the
thing.
Wave, yeah.
I want to believe that, but do you really think the Renegade and Compass
No,
drivers get that like treatment?
I don't think they do, but I think it is definitely a brand loyal thing. Yeah. I think even the fact that it's related to a Wrangler, they secretly like love that fact.
There's also part of it that's like a fantasy. Like when we go gaga for like sports cars and supercars, there's part of that fantasy that's like, I'm Juan Manuel Fangio, I'm racing a Ferrari around, you know, blah, blah, blah. And when you're in a Jeep, you also have that feeling like I'm, you know,
On top of the
Sir
world.
Edmund Hillary going down the Amazon. I know he didn't do that, but that's okay. There's part of a fantasy, and like that does seem to really matter. Like it's not, it hasn't gone away. It's never, every time an automaker comes out with a car where you can have that fantasy, it sells better because of it.
Yeah. I mean, people really just want to be able to take that dirt trail or like get through some snow with a little bit more confidence,
Absolutely.
right? And
Well, I
so-
think people see a lot of traffic and they, you know, when they're stuck in traffic, their eyes glaze over, they look over and they're like, oh, that field would be perfect if I could just use that
Yeah.
field to cheat this
I
traffic.
think that all the time. When I'm in a Jeep, I'm like, I could just run over that hill right now and
And
I'd
we
be out
never
of
do
this.
it.
And I never do it because I don't want to get arrested.
But yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting experience, and I do recommend. This was a program done with, I think, the Jeep Jamboree, which is a group that helps cater these kind of experiences for Jeep owners.
Cool.
But that's it for this week's episode. That's all we got to talk about. Okay, sorry, Sebastien. I don't want to talk to you whatever silly car you drove,
And your weird ideas.
or whatever car you ended up, one of your broken cars.
Or your old man sayings.
Yes.
You know, they said the same thing about Galileo, okay, guys?
But thank you for listening, and if you want to hear some of our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can click on the button down, probably down here, up here. I don't know where it is.
Over here, Brett is pointing.
Or
to.
if
Just
you
on my
want
face.
to not see us and just hear us, you can subscribe to us using a variety of podcast clients, depending on what platform you use. For example, we're on Apple iTunes. We're also on Google Play Music and Google Podcasts. And we've got some more coming on the way. I know we're on Pocket Cast as well. So make sure to subscribe. Jodi said you should rate us, although maybe not on this one episode because we were all over the place here. Although, you know what? Maybe that's good feedback too. Look, I already gave you feedback to provide us. You know, it's good.
I love how much confidence you have in us. That's good. That's nice.
Thanks, Sami.
And it's a great way for us to get better and as well for other people to see our podcast as well. So you're doing us a favor, you're doing other people a favor. It's win-win. Every Friday you'll see our podcast. So be sure to check in next Friday and see all the cool cars we've got coming that
Cool.
time.
Thank you for tuning in. Bye.